Hi, I'm Sarah Taylor. I'm an awakening trail guide and an intuitive energy healer. I'm also a late diagnosed ADHD woman. That means I'm autistic and ADHD. And welcome. In this video, I'm going to talk about forgiveness. What do you do if you're not ready to forgive? You know, in spiritual communities, concepts of forgiveness, compassion, service, kindness can become weaponized, and we can start to feel shame. Oh, I'm not grateful enough, or oh, I'm not forgiving those that hurt me. And in this video, I'm mostly talking about the deep pain that gets inflicted on us when we're young. And this could be by family members, people at school, people in our formative years who really harmed us, um, or even as adults, as young adults, or on into life. I guess I'm just not talking about, a friend irritates you, or you have a falling out with a loved one and you're kind of hanging on, you're having a grudge kind of thing. That's not what I'm talking about. As neurodivergent people, we tend to be very naive, very trusting. We see the good in others. When we're young, especially, we don't have maybe the strongest theory of mind. So if we wouldn't do something like that to harm somebody, we can't imagine why somebody would want to harm. And so we have this often, not always, I don't want to generalize, kind of a seeing the best in others and assuming the best, which is a beautiful quality. And it really, as I've matured and developed spiritually, I guess we could say, awakened. Um, I see the Buddha nature in everyone. Like, I can also see when they're being effed up and they're being harmful. Yeah, that's there too. But um, when I was younger, I definitely just assumed that people had my best interests in mind. And so I'm talking about the kind of forgiveness where you really are vulnerable and trusting and you get deeply hurt. I had a great comment from somebody on a video recently who um, shared that with an awakening and with a late diagnosis, they began to see how they were really abused. Um, and the rage, they were angry. And to me, reading the comment, it's a holy rage. It's a sacred passageway to be really angry. Once you kind of wake up and you have some sort of clarity, and I mean, you wake up to maybe mistreatment, okay? And you see it. There's going to be anger. And anger isn't bad. Anger, we hear all these things in spiritual communities too. Anger only hurts you. It's like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. Yes, if it's hung on to, if it's clung to, if it becomes an identity. But first and foremost, I find there needs to be a welcoming and an allowing. Healing comes in stages and phases. And so own your anger. If you're really angry at someone who hurt you, be angry. I'm not advocating for you to go out and take a baseball bat to their window on their car or anything like that. We don't have to take action necessarily on our anger, but to sit with it, to be with it, to feel it. Suppressed anger is suppressed vitality. And so often when we're young, we're trusting our caregivers, our family, and we intuitively feel like it's not safe to be angry. So once we start to have some clear seeing that we've been harmed or there's been some damaging behavior toward us, I think it's a sacred passageway because we didn't get to feel it at 3, at 5, at 8, at 10, at 15. And this goes for, as an adult, really traumatic things that happen as an adult. You don't have to immediately forgive. You get to be angry first. You get to be hurt first. You get to feel the grief. You get to feel whatever you feel. I don't want to tell you what to feel. You might not feel anger. But when people come to me and say, how can I begin to forgive? I say start with compassion for yourself, for what you've been through. That's the start. So I had an initial awakening where I woke up to the clarity of mind, that I'm not who I thought I was, and I'm actually clear, spacious awareness. And beautiful, beautiful beginning. It was just the beginning of awakening. And with that clear seeing of what I'm not, I began to see what I'd been through and what happened growing up. And it was stark, it was clear. I had known that I had been through mental, emotional, physical abuse as a kid, but I sort of swept it under the rug. But this didn't want to be swept under the rug. So what happened was there was a period of time where I went no contact with the people who had harmed me. There was quite a few people. And that's what I needed to do. I had had an awakening. I was a very deep, committed spiritual practitioner, and I wasn't talking to my family. And I had no shame about it, because there was some wisdom in me that knew I needed to go through this. I needed to fully experience what I couldn't as a child. And I needed to have deep compassion for myself, for what I had been through. And I remember a spiritual friend gave me a little trinket or something that said forgiveness on it, and said, here, you might want to forgive. And I loved her. She was a friend, and I know she meant well. And I put it was like a little rock that said forgiveness. I put it by my bedside table every night, and I would look at it and I'd get really angry. And finally one day I put it in my pocket and I went on a hike and I threw it. I threw it into the hills, and I just screamed at the top of my lungs, I am not ready to forgive, and that's okay. And so I guess that's when this shame or this should around forgiving fell away. And what that did was accelerate my healing, so that I could go through the anger, I could go through honoring these parts of myself that needed something back then. They needed acknowledgement, they needed witnessing, they needed compassion, love, kindness, gentleness. So after a few years of this no contact, there was a slow movement toward connection again. And there wasn't even conversations about it with these people who caused harm. There was no resolution between us at all. But something began to resolve within me. Something got reconciled because my heart was just so open to myself. And I also did a lot of Metta practice as a practicing Buddhist back then. I did a lot of Metta. If you're familiar with it, it's loving kindness practice, where you first bring in loving kindness toward yourself, and you send yourself the wish for peace and healing and goodness, and you send loving kindness to yourself. And then you send it to maybe someone who's easy to love. And you can switch around the order in which you do these things. You send it to a stranger, and then you send it to maybe groups of people, and then you send it to a challenging person. And I remember the instruction was not to send it to the most challenging person, because when you're starting to do Metta practice, you want to go easy, go gentle, give yourself, don't give yourself a huge mountain to climb up. And so I worked with, what difficult people in my life. We all have them. And, uh, and then I just decided to bring in one of the most difficult people and just started doing Metta. Um, and what happened was, doing Metta with them every day, I was invited to a Thanksgiving dinner where they were at, and I hadn't seen them in years. And I walked in the door, and when I saw them, my heart just went and opened, and there was like this flow of love toward them, because I'd been cultivating loving kindness toward them, not at the expense of my own acknowledgement of my anger, my pain, my sadness. And it was, whatever kind of Thanksgiving that it was. It was awkward and strange and also nice, and it was all the things. And I didn't stay in touch with the person. I didn't become pen pals and talk to them every night on the phone or anything like that. But it changed me. It changed me. But I didn't go about it with this idea that I have to forgive. I have to start being kinder. I have to regard this person who had harmed me more, favorably, or wish them well. I couldn't for a while. So there's something very powerful about that practice. And I had a great willingness to do it for myself, for my own awakening and healing. So it was kind of a selfish motivation, we could say. So I don't regret the periods of time I wasn't in contact with people who harmed me. And when forgiveness began to dawn for others, and there were others that I didn't necessarily do Metta practice with, and had cut off from them. And slowly over time, because of the compassion that was just naturally starting to radiate from me, through me, as me, I then had a deeper awakening, a non-dual awakening, and then there was an ease. I could open to these people again. Again, I didn't go hang out with them all the time, and there was no resolution, no conversation that would feel satisfying to 10-year-old me or 15-year-old me. But one day I just realized I'd forgiven everybody. And it was quiet. It wasn't a decision. So there are lots of ways to work with unresolved pain and not forgiving someone. Yeah, you can do metta. Yeah, you can cut off from people. You can, stew in your anger for a while. You can actively practice forgiving and try it on for size and see how weird it feels, and just keep doing it over and over again. Anyway, there is something to be said for neuroplasticity. But the foundation, I think, needs to be this acceptance and this welcoming in of all the emotions around how you've been harmed, how you've been mistreated. And so I recommend starting with compassion for yourself first. So when people say, how do I forgive? Just start with compassion for yourself. And if you can, find a therapist to work with, or healer, or a trusted mentor who can validate what you've been through. It's so important that you have people in your life to talk about these emotions that you're going through and whatever is unresolved, and they hold a compassionate space for you where you feel safe to share whatever it is you're thinking and feeling and experiencing, because we gaslight ourselves. We've been gaslit. That's not the way it is. You're not seeing the world like that. What are you That happens for a lot of neurodivergent people. And if you've been through some harmful experiences, it's definitely happened. And then we learn how to gaslight ourselves. And I hear people coming out of really harmful situations and saying like, God, I thought I was crazy. I thought I didn't know what was what after a while. And that'll happen. So to be validated by somebody that you trust and to develop a relationship with somebody that is trusted is so important. And it helped me so much. I had a great therapist years ago when I was going through this. So tell me, what is your experience with forgiveness and giving yourself compassion for everything that you've been through? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And if you liked this video, if you found it helpful, please like and subscribe, share it with someone that you think it might be helpful for. And as always, thanks for being here. I appreciate all of you so much. Till next time.